So one of the challenge that a lot of meditators are facing is that I am following a meditation practice or I am following a spiritual path, and sometimes I end up acting out of anger, fear, lust, or these sort of afflictive states, and then I feel this sense of shame, yeah, or I feel this sense of heaviness or fear about my behavior, right? Also, in fact, sometimes I feel this fear that I don't want to tell other people about that I'm practicing meditation, otherwise I will feel this pressure to act in a certain level of spiritual standards, right? So how do we deal with this? Yeah, so if you observe your mind, one thing you will notice is that our minds have a very involuntary self-judgment system. It's like almost like a self-correction system, right? So whatever we believe or whatever we build our identity around, our minds are constantly judging ourselves, right, based on that, and then adjusting our self-esteem around it, making us feel ashamed, making us feel proud, or all these sort of things, right? But this process is keep going on all the time. Yeah. So in this case, what happens in some time that when we picked up a meditation practice, right, we very involuntarily or we very implicitly made this self-agreement or this self-identity that since I am a meditator now, I shouldn't feel any form of afflictions, right? I shouldn't feel anger, fear, lust, any of this. Even if I feel it, I should not act out of it, right? I should not be acting out of anger, or I should not be acting out of lust. And if I do that, then I'm not a good meditator, right? So internally, even though it's not verbal, but internally this is what is going on, right? If we made up our identity that this is what the meditators are, this is how the meditator should be, then we are kind of self-judging ourselves based on our action, and then anytime we behave out of this sort of definition, we are going to feel shame, right? And I hope you can say that is this like a reasonable definition of a meditation practitioner, right? This is more like a definition of an arhant or somebody who has reached the final stage of meditation. Yeah, a right definition or right identity for a meditation practitioner would be more like I am somebody who is practicing meditation morning and evening, and I do my practice sincerely. I used to act out of a lot of these afflictive state of minds, right? Before I used to be, let's say, a lot more angry. I used to act out of my anger all 10 out of 10 time. Now with my practice, I'm acting out of less than 10 time, right? I might be acting out of 8 time, and I'm getting better, and I'm getting more refiner with my actions, right? More skillful with my action, in the sense that as I'm progressing in my path, I will act less and less, right? That would be more realistic and more reasonable self identity around the meditation part, right? So if I have that self identity, I mean, this is the first thing I would say I will try to look into and correct it. If I'm feeling shame around my action because I'm a meditator and I acted in this way or that way. Yeah. The second thing is, even though an experience of shame or something like self-judgment is very uncomfortable experience, but in reality it's like a signal, right? And sometimes it is pointing out towards the right thing as well. Yeah. So let's say someday I came home and I'm feeling very frustrated and angry and not just happy altogether, and I took my anger out on front of my child, right? Or I kind of scolded him even though it wasn't his fault. And then afterward I'm feeling this feeling of shame, I shouldn't have done that, right? But that is a correct signal. My shame is basically telling me this behavior was not skillful and I need to correct this behavior. A natural tendency would be to try to avoid that sort of shame or whatever. But sometimes if our beliefs are correct, right, that shame is pointing towards, it's like a good signal that I need to adjust my behavior in the future so that I don't act in this way, right? So in that sense, being able to experience that shame and taking it more as a signal compared to something that is very unhealthy or something like this and something to be avoided to, that is another layer of the same problem, right? Again, if my self-identity is correct, right? Let's say if I am identifying myself as somebody who's a practicing meditation, and then I'm not practicing morning and evening, or I'm just kind of practicing. I should be practicing 30 minutes. After 10 minutes I'm just running away and all that, and my mind is giving me a self judgment that I'm not a good meditator. That self judgment is correct, right? And I need to correct my behavior to optimize my overall well-being, right? So this is the two aspects. When I'm feeling something like shame, should I correct my self-identity or belief, or do I need to correct my behavior in some sense, right? And as you progress in the meditation, right, slowly once you start to become more mindful, and when you can see these things a lot more objectively and more disidentified with all these things, you also start realizing that a lot of these reactions that are happening through you are not as much as your fault, right? It is like how you were conditioned, how you were brought up, how your genetics are. There's a lot of factors, there's a lot of causes that are creating this sort of action, a reaction inside yourself. And you are trying to be meditator, you're trying to improve your behavior, you're trying to be a better human being, and you sort of start having more self-compassion towards yourself when you're acting out of afflictive state of mind, right? You're not like self-chastising yourself, or like having like this very strong self-judgment. There's more sense of gentleness as you progress in your meditation and your mindfulness increases. There's more sense of self-gentleness or self-compassion that you start to develop when you are kind of acting out of disharmony. Yeah. So if I recap everything, right, so the first thing I will look into it, like whether when I'm feeling something like a shame towards my practice or something like that, whether I have implicitly built some sort of unrealistic self-identity around meditation and how I should have been progressing, right, and correct that, right. And then I would see, like, if I would learn to be able to comfortably experience this experience of shame and see what signal it is giving me, and then having some faith that over the period of time as I practice more and more, these things will not have this kind of a grip on me,